even if you buy into an embryo there and start that way, the first investment will be the hardest, but she will repay you down the road, I think.
Welcome back to the Horseboard Ireland podcast with me, your host, Melanie Young. On this episode, we're about to talk to one of Ireland's most prolific breeders, Cheryl Broderick of Ballypatrick Stables. Cheryl was crowned this year's leading breeder in the National Young Horse Championships at the Dublin Horse Show. In our conversation, we dive into the process of breeding future champions, the importance of the Horseboard Ireland studbook and young horse classes, and the business realities of running such a large-scale operation. Cheryl, welcome to the show.
Thanks a million. Thanks for having me.
There are many sides to Ballypatrick, but in conversation with you today, I would love to just delve a little bit more into the sort of breeding element of the operation and the sort of business of breeding, I guess, of Ballypatrick. As I said, it's a prefix that people are familiar with. It's jumping, we're seeing horses with that BP prefix jumping to huge high standards on both national and international stages. I mean, if we do a very small roll of honour, you had horses competing at the Youth Show Jumping Europeans with BP Goodfellas winning individual silver with Tabitha, BP Rocketman with Neve. You have recently been awarded the leading breeder in the National Young Horse Championships at the RDS. It's incredible, the success, but I suppose if we take it back a little bit, what is it or what was it that sort of sparked your joy on the breeding side of the equestrian world?
I think actually, when I think of it more, I was always from a young age loved animals. Doesn't matter what they were. But then, we had a lot of dry stock and suckler cows on the farm when we were younger, and I always did the cows with Dad, putting them in calf and the cows and all of that. So, it was an interest in breeding. It was just in a different with a different animal, I suppose. And then Dad, we had a few nice mares when I was younger as well, and I kind of always went in the Jeep with Dad to put them in foal, and it was from there I definitely kind of unknowns to myself, it was that I was always veering in that direction. Obviously back then we didn't have the standard of mares that we have today, but now I suppose over the years, the standard of mares have improved. We've swapped in and swapped out mares, and I kind of think now that we're at a stage where the offspring are coming from those and they're starting to prove themselves and kind of maybe showing me a little bit that I'm going in the right direction anyway. You can always improve, but, we're going in the right direction, I think.
Can you give us a sort of a rough breakdown of how many mares and foals and stallions and all that are kind of in the breeding operation?
I suppose we're probably looking at, we breed in average of 60 to 70 foals a year. And a lot of those are, very few of our own mares carry their own foals. It's mostly based on embryo transfer now. An area that we've got into a lot more is recipient mares, because we've started to do ICSI with our good mares for the winters. And then we implant a lot of embryos now for the summers. So you have a lot of extra stock that way of brood mares and recipient mares, and then obviously Greg's donor mares that are jumping that come over to me for embryo transfers. So it's a lot of different dynamics in the breeding business now. So it's nice, but it's full on.
Yeah, and what sparked that? Why is that where you see the industry going, or what was the move to that area?
Yeah, well, you see a lot of the foals now at the sales, and they're all ICSI foals, but I suppose a lot of the mares that are here with us are all mares that are jumping, and they're very good pedigrees. So you like to kind of make use of them when you can. When their off seasons are for the winter, they can have a little break for a couple of weeks, and we do some OPU on them, which is very good. And then we send everything off to Avante, and they come back in frozen to us. So that kind of gives us time then to implant them for the summer months. Embryo transfers is also a thing that we do a lot of, because of the fact that obviously most of the mares are in sport. So we just have time, maybe Greg can give them for a week or two where they can have a break and take some embryos from them then. And we have a lot of very good recipient mares, so they do all the hard work after that. But that's probably the most expensive part also of the business. It's running a large herd of recipient mares. And it's only till you get into it, you see, you could have 40, 50 recipient mares there, and, that could be carrying foals. And then you could have another 30 that are dry for the winter. So you're keeping that stock over the winter as well. But then you have them early in the spring, to take embryos. So it's a lot of moving parts, but we enjoy it. And I think, I hope to think that, our breeding will keep improving because we've gone down these different avenues to improve it,
Yeah, absolutely. Swings and roundabouts, as you say, but it's proving itself, I think, definitely from the outside looking in, it looks to be. Are there benefits to you as a breeder by doing it this way, do you think?
I think so, because my good mares, I can have, like at the moment I have 62 frozen embryos in the tank from our best mares. And some of those could give you 5, 6, 7 frozen embryos in one season, during the winter of ICSI. Like, it would take an awful long time for a mare naturally to have 6 foals or 5 foals, whereas you can do that in one go. I'm not saying they're all going to keep, but at least to have them there and you have the opportunities. And it also lets the mare concentrate on the sport more, that she's not taking breaks more often than she needs to. She can concentrate in sport, and then just for a couple of weeks in the winter, we can take the eggs from her. So yeah, it's definitely something that I enjoy doing, and I think I'll do a lot more of with the mares.
Yeah, and I mean, you can clearly see from that side, there's a very close connection between, let's say, the breeding side and the sports side of Ballypatrick anyway. How does that dynamic work? Like, obviously you work alongside Greg, your brother, who's probably, I would imagine, more involved in the training and sports side of it. But how are the family dynamics? How do they play out in that?
My brother he's a great knowledge of pedigrees, and he really enjoys pedigrees. He can trace back families for generations. He's probably better than I am for it, and he's very sharp in it. Also, that he travels away a lot, more than I would, to foreign shows. So he's able to bring back a lot of knowledge to me about what bloodlines are doing really well, what young stallions are coming through, what new mare lines are working well, what crosses are working well. And then he brings it back and said, look, Cheryl, this might work on this mare. We should try and use this stallion more. So those kind of things are invaluable to me as a breeder, because, you do have to work in conjunction with somebody else, a riders, where it's trainers, or, somebody that is kind of understanding what the market needs and what riders are really looking for at the moment. Because there's no point in us, being breeders off on our own, doing our own thing. And, but what are you breeding for at the end of the day? You're breeding for the top sport. So that means you need to be in the mix of it. You need to be at those big shows. You need to be watching what riders need and trying to breed things to match that riders really want to get on, and they enjoy looking at that horse and they say, look, I'd love to ride that horse in the future. For me, that's what I would love,
If we touch on the team aspect of it, there's a great crew of riders down in Ballypatrick now that are producing these young horses for you. Do you enjoy that part of it too, seeing them progress?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm so lucky. Really, my job is very small compared to, I just put them on the ground and then they come over here when they're 3, But to have the riders, the caliber of riders that we have that are interested in riding young horses as well. There's a lot of riders that just want to ride the older horses and they have no interest in getting on them till they're 6 or 7 and they're ready to go to the bigger classes, But, our riders, to come over and they watch them loose jump in Fort William at the breeding farm. They've ridden the sisters, they've ridden the brothers that have gone in front of them. Some of them, Ashley says now that she's seen 3 generations of the families come through. She's here 16, 17 years. So there's an interest in it that I'm very lucky that everybody has. And, they compare them to the ones that went before them of the same family. And then if there's a very nice 6-year-old that we have at the moment, and the girls were asking me, the riders, they were saying, oh, what has that mother coming through again? So it builds a kind of a nice interest, and we all know the families, and we all know, we all look forward to them, what's coming next from them, if they're good. And then if the ones that are no good, I don't think nobody asked me any questions about that.
Yeah, but I think that's lovely, and it's a real sort of full circle, process that's going on, having the breeding and the producing of them. So it's lovely to hear that, and as you say, it's not for everyone, and not everyone has facilities for this, but it's lovely when it works, I suppose. You touched on Fort William. That's the breeding facility that you guys have sort of developed in recent years. It's a few miles away from Ballypatrick, but still very close. Talk us through that.
It's only 5 minutes from here, and it's 224 acres, and it's specifically for the breeding. And we just built some very nice sheds in it, done a lot of fencing, and it was 224 acres of just it needed a lot of work to it. And so there's roadways gone in, there's paddocks, it's sheds gone in, there's scanning units gone in, folding boxes. So we kind of went away and looked at different ideas from different places, and we bought ideas back. And I think we got the best of a lot of different places that we think would work for ourselves. And to be honest, it's very nice for the mares there, because when we were going earlier, everything was in the one farm here in Ballypatrick. So we had the jumping horses, we had the stallions, we had the mares and foals coming in now to be scanned. So you could imagine how hectic that was. So now I think it's a lot more relaxed over there. They have a lot of room and they're very, very happy, and that's the main thing for mares, that they're stress-free, and, and also that the environment that the young foals grow up in, that they get a chance and they get the best. Well, you try and give them the best that you can for them, that they're healthy and they're happy,
Yeah, absolutely. And like those facilities can only but, support the work that you're doing. You're putting in these hours and stuff. So it's wonderful to have. It's sort of what I say, it's your kind of baby in that sense, that like, do you really enjoy going over there and it's really set up for you?
I love it. To be a breeder, you have to be passionate about it also, because there's a lot more bad days than will good days, and I think that when I breed them ourselves and we have the families, we become more invested in it. So I have to be very careful that I don't think all my geese are swans. So I can think like they're all going to be brilliant, and you wish them to be brilliant, but that's just not the reality of how it is, And so that's why I'm lucky that when Greg comes over, or Neve, Leah, Harry, Cass, you have all those other eyes on these young horses that see them loose jumping and that see their first jumps under saddle, that can just put an eye on them and say, look, Cheryl, maybe this isn't what we're looking for or what other people are looking for. Because the market, you have to breed for the market that you want. We want to breed 5-star horses. But if they're not going to be 5-star horses, they need to be very rideable, uphill, balanced, good-looking horses that can be saleable to a market that, most people can ride. Amateur 140s, that's also very good. If they are going to be 130 horses, that's fine, but you need to decide when you're going to sell them, and that's probably not for us. We're hoping that we want to breed the 5-star horse that can jump 160. So I think in a game like the breeding, it gets very expensive. So you have to make your mind up quite quickly and decide what route those horses are going to go. If we have 50 or 60 horses coming every year, 3-year-olds, it's a lot of stock to keep. So you need to be on it with x-rays, deciding what they are, if they're going to be good enough for what we need, if they're going to maybe go an event route, if they're going to be a nice riding horse for someone, but there mightn't be a 5-star horse. There is other options for them. But the thing about it is to know that early, so that you're not putting good money after bad onto them, if you know what I mean.
That was actually something that I was going to touch on. Is how do you know, or when are you making these decisions, whether you're going to retain them for producing on your end, or you're going to sell them, or like, I know you have the auction at the end of each year. At what point, I guess, is probably different for each horse, am I guessing? Or how often are you sort of making these decisions?
Like today now, I had the 3-year-old fillies in, and, I might bring them up in bunches of 10s, and I would jump them left and right. Nothing big, just small little fences, vertical down to oxers. But, you can see so much even from that. They don't have to jump big houses for you. They just need to see how they are, see if they can hold their canters in the corner, see what kind of balance they have, whether you think they're going to ride into the ground, that somebody has to wear a big double bridle on them to get them up. You know what I mean? If they're naturally a nice canter, nice balance, good looking horse, you can see an awful lot in those horses before you ever put a saddle on their back. Obviously the x-rays are becoming a big issue now. So for us, we need to x-ray at the back end of the 2-year-old season. Whereas before we weren't x-raying till maybe, they were starting to be broken. But for us, that's probably not, that doesn't make sense for us, because if something has really bad x-rays, it doesn't matter how good they are, you're very short of roads that you can go down with them,
That x-ray side of things is interesting, because it's playing such a huge part in the sale of a horse now, really, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And you would like, to think that they will stay sound, and maybe for x-rays they'll forgive them more if they're 7 or 8 with a couple of things on their x-rays, because they've stayed sound up to then they will forgive them with bad x-rays as a 3-year-old or 4-year-old, and that's just the reality of it. So for me, now if there was fillies there with not so wonderful x-rays, I can push them into the recipient herd for me now. And I think that's a nice way for us too, because they're 3-year-old fillies that have never bred, and they will have a role as recipient mares for the donor mares here at Ballypatrick. So that has been something that has happened more and more for us, in the last while.
Yeah, and I think that's lovely. It's like you said, whether they're going to go the jumping 160s route, or they're 130 horses, or they're eventers, or they can be recipient mares for you. There's kind of a route for them all. It's just about sussing it out, and hopefully sussing it out before too much time has passed, I guess.
Yeah. And I think for me, I was just saying, Niamh won the 4-year-olds in Dublin on a stallion that's here. And I love the stallion side of things as well. And the mares and foals, they're my two passions. But she also then rode in the 5-star in Dublin. So to have a rider, sit on a 4-year-old for you, and then she has a lot to compare it to. I'm very blessed with that. Greg, who's ridden in the Olympics with Going Global, can ride those young horses, and they have a lot of, they can compare them to the top horses that they have ridden. And for me, that's what I want to do, so for them to kind of get down off the horse and say, give me some pointers and say, look, maybe it's a bit weak here, or if you're crossing the mare again, use something with more of a canter, or it needs to be more careful in front. Like all those little pointers, they're invaluable for breeders,
How kind of critical is the breeding side to Ballypatrick's kind of overall business model?
To be honest, I think it's becoming more and more, one is working, upsides with the other now. My sister will tell you that, when you start off breeding, and she does the books down there, Olga, a lot of money goes in to that section, and you don't see any money, getting you're not at the receiving end of any of it till they're maybe 5 or 6. So it's a very long wait. So when you're looking at how much money is being invested in the breeding side, my sister will be often giving out going, oh my God, you know what I mean? Because it takes a while for you to see the fruits of it. But I think if you're patient and that you have the right mares, and I really do think that for every breeder, start with the right mare, because it's a long road, it's a hard road, and it's very hard to get good horses. But if you don't have the foundations right, for me, the best mare that you can put your hands on, well, then it becomes very, very hard, and when you have the good mares, I think you're 80% of the way along,
Yeah, kind of good start and you're halfway there.
Yeah. And even, if I know it's hard to buy into a good mare, but if you can get into the good families at a young age, like even if you buy into an embryo there from, can buy from Mares and Maca there, it's a whole big catalogue from the best mares in the world. And if you get a filly or buy into a yearling or 2-year-old filly and start that way, the first investment will be the hardest, but she will repay you down the road, I think.
So would that be sort of, if you were to pick a key piece of advice for breeders, and, realistically, most we're talking about are on a smaller scale than you, is that where you say to start?
Yeah, I think so. When I think of the mares I started off with, I had Mrs. Quinn. I was lucky enough to get Mrs. Quinn from Lee Kruger when Going Global was sold. She gave me a present of Mrs. Quinn. So that mare is like part of the family. She's 22 now, if anything happens to her, I'd say I'll be devastated. I know I'll be devastated, but she bred Cantastic for me. And he was actually born on the morning of an Aga Khan when Greg was double clear. And on the front of the newspaper, it says, Greg is Cantastic or something was the heading.
Yeah,
and I said, I have to call Mrs. Quinn's horse that. So that's how he got it. But he's gone on to jump 5-star Grand Prix in Mexico, Then I had Goodwin's Loyalty that Kevin Babington was very good to send back here. And she bred Goodfellas, who was double clear with won 2 medals with Tabitha Coyle at the Europeans. Also won a medal with Ger O'Neill in Lanikin. And then another son of hers won a bronze medal in 7-year-olds in Lanikin with Michael Duffy. So, it's not a fluke that these horses are coming out of these good mares, Not every one of them are going to be good, that the breeder, some of the crosses are not going to work well. But, for me, it's not a fluke that these horses are coming from such good pedigrees and such good mare lines.
We will come back to our conversation with Cheryl in a minute, because of course breeding is only the beginning of the story. Once these horses are on the floor, the next challenge is producing them, and I'm delighted to be chatting to Niamh McAvoy, one of the talented riders based at Ballypatrick Stables. Niamh, thanks for joining us.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Niamh, you have had like a whirlwind couple of years. You're newly crowned national champion after winning the Premier Series, the Plus Vital Premier Series. Dublin Horse Show was another huge success for you. You recorded your first 5-star win in the 150 Dublin Stakes. What have the last few years been like for you? Can you kind of sum them up for us?
It's been brilliant. I've been so lucky. I first came to Ballypatrick, I think 3 years ago, full time. So whenever I was finishing school, I was here a little bit as well. But my parents wanted me to finish school, of course. And they've just been amazing, really. The first year I properly did horses was brilliant. I jumped my first 5-star that year in Dublin, and I was ninth, I think, in the Grand Prix. I had the second last fence down, which was amazing. I was just 18. And then from there, every year has just been brilliant. This year in particular, I was delighted to be national champion, and Dublin was just amazing. So I've been really lucky with the opportunities I've got, and I've been in a great place and a great team around me.
Yeah, but how did the connection with Greg and Ballypatrick come about? Where did that come from?
I suppose he's such a renowned yard, Ballypatrick. Like, there's so many horses, courts of Cheryl and the breeding. And I suppose I was coming off ponies. I had quite a good pony career. And then when I first came down, I loved it. So I thought this is definitely where I wanted to work.
Talk us through that. You mentioned you did your first 5-star Grand Prix a couple of years back, but this year you recorded a win in Dublin, as I mentioned, in those 1.50 Dublin Stakes. What was that like?
Oh, that was really amazing. I suppose Dublin's all of our favourite shows. Like for an Irish person, it's their favourite show every year, and it's definitely a week we aim to peak at, because it's hard to get into Dublin for the 5-star, and I was delighted to get in this year. But it was just amazing to win that class. I've watched it for years and years, and it's one of my favourite classes probably in Dublin. It's usually quite tricky and difficult, but the horse I had was just incredible, and yeah, it was definitely probably my biggest achievement to date, I would say.
You mentioned it's hard to get into that 5-star sort of category in the Dublin Horse Show. Can you explain to the listeners a little bit of how you got your kind of golden ticket, I suppose, for want of a better word, into that section?
To be based in Ireland is usually, it can be quite difficult. You don't have access to the same shows, but they have a couple of slots designated for riders that are based in Ireland. So first of all, you would have 2 slots from the Premier League, which Susan Fitzpatrick and Cathal Daniels got this year. And they also have 2 slots for home and away, it's called. So that would be the Irish based rider that gets the most ranking points between February and I think May. So I was lucky to get that slot. We went out to Florida, and I had a brilliant string of horses there. So they got a nice bit of ranking points and things like that. So that was how I got my place. But in previous years, I've always got in through the Premier League. So it's nice that they have that to kind of give the riders based in Ireland an opportunity, because, as I say, it's a difficult show to get into.
How important is it for the likes of you guys, because you do base yourselves predominantly in Ireland and campaign predominantly in Ireland, to get those availabilities or those opportunities, I guess, to compete at the shows? Because that, I'm sure, just only improves both you and the horses.
I think so. I think I think obviously Dublin's our young horse championships as well as a 5-star, and it's Ireland's only 5-star, which makes it a very big deal for any Irish person. But I think for Ballypatrick, it's brilliant because they can really showcase the young horses. You know, obviously, as you were with Cheryl, the homebreds, which is brilliant. But to get the opportunity to jump at that level, really, I think as a rider would really bring you on as well, and to compete against those people, and you learn so much. And I think every year that even the Irish-based riders go, I think they do themselves justice that, even if they're not jumping 5-star every week, like a lot of the riders based abroad or things like that, they still, I don't think any of them shame themselves anyway. So it's good to see that even the competition in Ireland is a high enough standard that that their 3 Irish-based riders can go and compete, and be able to actually compete and not just make up the numbers. They can be competitive. And you also have Cian O'Connor's predominantly Irish-based, and Tom Watchman and things like that. So it definitely shows that the standard's very high, even in Ireland.
As you mentioned, we've been speaking with Cheryl about the kind of breeding side of Ballypatrick, and I think they're nearly her babies, I guess, from one sense. It must be hugely satisfying for you to sort of, I guess, be involved seeing them as they come through their full 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old year. When you start kind of then getting on board and competing them, it must be quite satisfying seeing that development.
Definitely. I think like Cheryl, it means so much to Cheryl, and it's really great to see someone so passionate. Like these horses are like her, like as you say, they're like her babies, and she's like an encyclopedia with breeding, and Greg's brilliant with that as well. So it's actually so interesting to even learn from them and their knowledge. Like it's brilliant. And then you could be riding a horse, and Greg would have ridden the mother or the relations, and all the kind of interlinks between them is very interesting, and the similarities. So I think that definitely makes it more special, especially whenever you're producing them from a young age. And whenever someone is as passionate as Cheryl, it's bound to be extremely rewarding to see her horses. Like she had the 2 8-year-old homebreds at the Europeans, which was such a massive achievement. I'd say there's not too many of those.
Yeah.
So definitely, I think it's lovely the way they do it, and lovely that it's a family.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it seems, and it's something I've spoken about with Cheryl as well, like it does seem like a real family, close-knit team sort of that's in Ballypatrick. And I guess, talk to us a little bit. You mentioned the 2 8-year-olds out at the Youth Europeans. Like that's an incredible feat for any breeder, never mind then being able to produce them and having them still kind of under that Ballypatrick banner. That must have been a very special week for the whole team.
It really was. Yeah, it's definitely a really close-knit team, and which is so important. Like it's a very up and down sport, and you need good people around you. But that was definitely one of the weeks that was brilliant. Like for an 8-year-old to do juniors and younger, the Europeans is very difficult. Like they're challenging tracks, and I think these 2 8-year-olds really stood out, and they looked like they're both going to be really top horses for the future, which was lovely. And they both really showed their class, I suppose. And it was lovely for Cheryl having bred both of them. It was a big achievement.
What about the kind of training that goes into getting the likes of that BP Rocketman and those 8-year-olds out to those Europeans? Because there's sort of so many elements to it. Talk us a little bit about the process from, bringing them on as the 4 or 5, 6-year-olds, and how you sort of develop them in that way.
Yeah, of course. So both those horses were developed in Ireland. Like they've been in Ballypatrick their whole life. BP Goodfellas, he was the world champion as a 5-year-old in Lanigan, and BP Rocketman competed there as a 7-year-old. So it's also great to see like the Irish system clearly is very beneficial. Like they both came up through. Goodfellas was quite green as a 5-year-old, although he did win Lanigan, but he didn't do a massive amount of shows. He was like carefully produced. I think they always had a plan with him, and Rocketman the same. Like they knew they were brilliant horses. But for a Europeans, you probably have to make it your aim at the start of the year, especially for an 8-year-old horse, because they're green, they're not as strong in their bodies. They need a bit more time to develop and things like that. So obviously you never want to cram too much work. So it's something you need to pick early on, which I think we kind of did that. We had the aim for that, and then you can bring them along slowly and keep them confident and keep them happy. And it was lovely the way it worked out. Now they're both 2 brilliant horses. So the jumping was never an issue, but just when you get them riding nice on the flat, and Greg puts a lot of work into that, and I suppose both the horses were in great form, and you put everything now into making sure it's a good week.
Yeah, and then a little bit of luck on your side, I'm sure.
Exactly. Yeah. That's the same thing.
I guess talk us through a little bit. I'm sure every day is slightly different, and different times of the year it ends up being when you're away at shows and things. What's sort of a standard day at home in Ballypatrick? How many horses are you riding, or what's the team up to, or what's the plan, let's say?
So they have a lot of horses here. There's probably about 90 horses getting ridden every day, and that's aside from Cheryl's breeding farm. Like it's separate. So there's definitely no shortage of horses. But a standard day, it's a lovely place because there's lots of people working here, lots of probably youngish people as well, which is nice. So usually we would start at 7:30, and all the horses, we like to get them out as much as we can. So some would go on the walker in the morning, some to the field, some hand graze, different things like that. But we try to make sure that they all have a varied routine and that they get out of their stables as much as possible. So usually we would start riding, and it's every day is definitely different. Depends on what shows are coming up. We try to probably ride 8 or 9 horses a day or somewhere around that. Yeah, we just, as I say, prioritize them getting to the field and things like that.
Have you got a horse for us to look out for, Niamh, that we can kind of keep an eye on coming up through the ranks maybe?
Well, Recommend's probably the obvious one to say because he's an 8-year-old, but I have a brilliant 7-year-old. Well, I've a few brilliant 7-year-olds, but one in particular that really impressed us last week. He did his first National Grand Prix, was Bully-Bon Alvaro, and he's actually a stallion. He's been a brilliant horse. He got a silver medal in Lanarkshire as a 5-year-old, and he was national champion in Dublin as a 6-year-old. So I'm really hoping he has a good Lanarkshire in 2 weeks. But I think he's a really special horse, as well as Dalariada's boy, another 7-year-old. He's been very consistent, and another horse I really love. There's also I've a lovely bunch of 5 and 6-year-old horses. BP Wishes is going to Lanarkshire, and BP Lucky Clover. So they're ones to all watch out for.
Absolutely. For our listeners, Niamh was grinning from ear to ear here talking about these horses. So she's definitely excited. Look, Niamh, thanks for chatting to us, and we'll get back to our chat with Cheryl now.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
What does your typical day at home look like? I mean, I'm sure there's no such thing as a typical day, but at this time of year, what are you doing?
So we still take embryos now. So the mares that have done well in Lanarkshire or in Dublin that maybe are not going to Lanarkshire, we start to take embryos from them now. Then we also wait until after Lanarkshire for some mares that are there, and we'll also take embryos from them. So we have mares that are not foaled yet, which people would probably go, oh my God. But if you're not selling them, we're not in a rush for them. If they're not, if they're still weak as 2 or 3-year-olds, you just drop them back with the next bunch, And I think it's a very good initiative also for breeders in Dublin. You can jump your mares at 5 in the 4-year-old class, which we did where BP Royal Highness, she was a 5-year-old. She won the qualifier in Dublin, and then she was 3rd in the final. She actually bred a foal. So it's a nice opportunity, if those mares also have bred foals, you can drop them back a year and they can compete as 5. And I think that also is a very nice initiative for breeders to think about maybe taking a foal from those good mares early, because after Dublin is a shop window for selling horses. So if you are a breeder and you decide to sell them after Dublin, at least you have some young stock on the ground after. You'll really appreciate it then if you sell them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a huge incentive, as you say, to take it early doors. And I guess if we touch on some of those sort of breeding initiatives, I mean, a lot of them funded by the Department of Agriculture and Food and Marine, delivered by Horse Sport Ireland. Do you think that is a good pathway for young horses? Like, do you enjoy following that series and think it is valuable to the young stock coming through?
Yeah, I do actually. I think even, to be honest, I really do like those young horse classes as well for, the 5, 6, 7-year-olds. Like, if you look back at Going Global's time, he never jumped outside of Ireland until he was 8. Just going into his 8-year-old career. He did the 4-year-old stud books. He did the 4-year-olds for Dublin. He jumped in the 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, 7, 8s. So he didn't actually have to travel outside of the country. His production was here.
Yeah.
And I think Ireland is very, very lucky. I say we don't know how lucky we are, but with these classes that we have week in, week out for young horses. You get them on the lorry, you get them out to a nice show, nice fences, nice arenas. It's a great education for them. And it really does, it's a very good stepping stone for, our horses to go on to international level. And you see that in, day out, I think, with horses. And then also the Breeders' Classic, we can see all the time the horses that do well at the Breeders' Classic always go on to do well at Lanarkshire as well. So I think we're doing a lot of things very right here.
Is it something that you think is important to not overface these young horses?
I think it all depends individually on the horse, what they are capable of. And I think they'll tell you also, and that's where the riders come in, if they need a break, if they're weak. There's nothing wrong with if you jump your 4-year-old, it comes in at the start of a 5-year-old season and it's just weak in itself and, backing itself, open the gate and let them out, and I think that's where in Ireland we're so blessed with the land, the environment that we have, that horses will thrive out, and I think really, for 6, 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds, that's when you need them for when they get a bit, you need them just to get a bit older and put mileage on them when they're young and keep them in their comfort zone as much as you can, for sure.
You mentioned the World Breeding Championships in Lanikin are coming up. I'm guessing there's a team hopefully heading from Ballypatrick. Are there a few nice homebreds heading?
Yeah, I think I'd say there will be 6 or 7 homebreds will go anyway. There's some nice ones that we really will look forward to. Lanikin has been a really lucky place for us, I think it's extra special when there's a homebred going, I'm very biased, I know, but
but they're your children.
Yeah, and I think there's Harry Wood has beat Piatina. She's Agonix out of a Babico mare that we had the mother and we had the grandmother here. So I think that's a nice, that would be very competitive in the 5-year-olds. She actually was second in the Breeders' Classic 5-year-olds last weekend. And it's funny because her mother also was second in the 5-year-old Breeders' Classic with Ethan Ahern. So it was like history repeating itself, And I think BP Wishes, another Agonix, I think if she goes, she'll be very competitive also. I think Ballybawn Alvaro, which was bred by Ronan Rothwell, I think that horse is a really good style. If you saw him in the Grand Prix last week, I think he gave an exhibition of jumping. I think he's really in good form coming into Lanikin, and I think he'll be definitely one to watch. I know there's a lot of things have to go right for the few days over there, but he's definitely showing all the signs that he's in great form there. And then Arave Clover, who won a medal in Lanikin with Greg, gold medal, her daughter goes there also. And I think she's in top form as well. And it would be nice if she could repeat what her mother did also. So there's some nice horses going over, but we just need a bit of rub at the green over there.
You mentioned earlier that you had some 3-year-olds in loose jumping today and probably a few others have been in at different points. Have you got a horse for us to look out for next year, maybe Rising 4, that you're hoping will be shining somewhere?
We have some nice stallions coming through there as well. We're keeping a lot of stallions now. Obviously, it's a side of the business that we started to move into as well. So maybe I would have castrated a lot of them younger before, but now I let them run mostly till the back end of 2-year-old year. So I have a lot of very nice colts coming through, I think. Obviously, I have the family of Goodwin's Loyalty and BP Queedy, who bred the 2 medal winners from the Europeans at Niamh Road and Tabitha Road. So there's some nice ones coming on from their families as well. But actually, talking about championships, it's the first time I went to a young rider championship, the Europeans, when Tabitha and Niamh Road, and I wasn't going to go and I think it's good because breeders sometimes can get stuck in their own one little thing and think that you forget maybe that you have to get out there to see what these championship courses are like and what things are, what these fences are like and what these horses have to jump. Yeah. That's my first time over there. I couldn't believe the size of fences, the time allowed's tight, how tricky these tracks are, the lines, the way the course builders build them, it's just, you really have to be on your A game and you really need a really good horses on you, but also blood horses that can stay jumping for those days. They have to jump a lot of days in a row and they still have to be fresh coming into the final on Sunday. So, and I think for me, it was amazing because they were embryo transfers. So I got to see those ones that in a dish at 8 years old when we were transferring them over to the recipients. So like when they went clear and they won medals, I was crying and someone was like asking me, what's wrong with you? Like it wasn't crying out of sadness. I was just so happy,
Yeah.
But you say people must have saying, wonder what is wrong with her. But you just get emotional, you know what I mean? For me, it's what it's all about. And, I walked the track in Dublin also for the Grand Prix in the 5-star Grand de Rolex. And I mean, for every breeder, it's definitely it should be on their thing to do, to go in and walk that track and see it. Like, it would put the hair standing on the back of your neck that you say, my God, like this is what I need to be doing. Like this, I have to be so critical of my breeding program. I need to be really on it to get the horses that can jump this track, because I mean, you see the size of it, you see the distances, you see the planks that, you know, just a little gust of wind would probably, the barest robe would take it down. You know, they have to be such athletes that you're breeding for these top riders. So it really was unbelievable. And every year I say, like, that's the one thing I look forward to, walking that track, because you come home afterwards and I always feel kind of like inspired to get going again, and that these are the horses that we need, you know?
Yeah. And that's important too, as you say, to sort of step away and step back and, you know, think of that bigger picture, you know, every now and again, that, you know, what are we aiming for? What do I want from the stock that we're producing? And I mean, look, it's, you know, it's wonderful that you've had the success you've had, but it's down to hard work and long nights and long days and early mornings and all that. So it's wonderful that you get the chance. And I'm glad that was your first championships to go to. What a championships.
It was unreally, like, it was amazing now. It really was. And the horses are, you know, what they do for us is unbelievable, and how, what athletes they are. And the jockeys like Niamh and Tabitha were amazing over there. But it's not just them, it's the team. You know, the whole team, the grooms that are minding them, they mind them like babies. You know what I mean? Lisa, Ashley, and everybody here, you know, they really give it their all for them. And there's a whole team around that you look after these horses the whole way up, and it should just pays off. And I think when you win medals like that, or you jump clear in 5 stars and you know, you win classes, it's for everybody, because everybody has a part to play in it. Like Ash is here 17 years. She's seen so much, you know. I'm very lucky that I can, you know, something that I'm passionate, a hobby that I can actually do as every day, you know. So it's amazing. But I think there's so many passionate breeders in Ireland. Like when we have the stallion show here, we have it on the first Sunday of every April. Like the amount of breeders that come and the turnout, but everybody has, you know, they have a mare, they want to talk about their stallions, and it's nice that everybody gets to interact and people love it, you know. And you know, there's somebody has a mare, every second person nearly has a mare that you're talking to, and they're all trying to do the same thing. So I think it's nice when we can get together and, you know, talk about things and inspire each other if we can.
Yeah, and I think that's important. It's like that connection with people who are sharing that same passion with you. And like, Cheryl, it's so obvious the passion that comes out of you, but also Ballypatrick, and the drive to do good, but also to do good by the horses, I think, which is key. And, you know, as you say, these animals give us so much joy. It's so lovely to hear, you know, how appreciative you are. And I mean, yes, there's tears and there's probably good ones and bad ones throughout the year, but you know, it's just lovely to see the passion behind it all.
But sure, it's funny, you go to something happens, like you have fences down in a big class and you're disgusted, and then you're like thinking, oh, for God's sake, and it's a homebred and I'm raging, you know, and then you go home and you flush an embryo the next day and it's like nothing happened, you know, you're back going. So, you know, the highs and lows of everything, and you just have to take the good with the bad and just keep the shoulder to the wheel and keep going, you know.
Cheryl, it's been so lovely chatting to you. And as I say, the passion that comes out of both you and everyone in the team Ballypatrick is just admirable. And yeah, it's been really lovely chatting to you. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
If you would like to find out more about what we've covered in this episode, you'll find notes, links, and more in the description area of this podcast. Do remember to press follow for our show so you can get the next episode automatically. And do share it with a friend with an interest in the industry. Just tell them to search Horsesport Ireland on their podcast app. Our podcast today was produced by dustpod.io and brought to you by horsesportireland.ie.